Hi everyone, you are my Thursday afternoon warriors. Thanks for hanging in there. It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon and it's beautiful and sunny outside, so I really appreciate you taking the time to jump in on this. So hello everyone and welcome to the Washington Student Achievement Council's Spring Training Webinar Series. This session will cover the 2020-21 Passport to Careers Program Guidance and Portal Updates. This session is being recorded and will be made available on our website. In order to reduce background noise, all participants are muted, but if you'd like to ask a question, please type your question into the question box located on the control panel. We are lucky to have a couple people working in the background. So Carla is our session moderator and Victor is working the technology piece behind this. So thank you for being there, and just wanted to let you know that Carla will be seeing the questions before I do. So if you type a question in, she will get to it before I do. And then she will review and share them with me. So there are several natural stopping points throughout the session that will allow me to pause and respond to your questions. We'll do our best to answer all of them, but if we're unable to do so, we will follow up with the person posing the question directly. So you also may want to note that there is a slight lag between the time that you type in your question and send it to us and when we receive it. So just be patient, give us a little bit of grace, and we're going to try to get to it as quickly as we can. So I've also noticed that we have a very broad range of attendees participating today, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us and for participating. My name, if you don't know me, my name is Dawn Cipriano McCafferty, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Passport to Careers program. And with that, I'm going to turn my camera off and let's get started. So I'm just going to quickly review the information that I'll be covering today. Of course, I'll be talking about the final phase of our program's expansion. We'll review the portal updates that were recently deployed and some of the background enhancements that we have in place. We'll talk about some program changes that are coming up. And finally, the information on the resources available for aid administrators and student support staff. So this is just a little bit of background here for those of you who are well versed in the program. Just hang with me here. I want to go ahead and cover this for those who may not have as much experience as you do. But for those of you in the audience who may not know that passport eligibility has changed in recent years. In 2018, the legislature passed a bill that gradually phased in and expanded student eligibility for passport. Program changes also included the option for students to pursue either a college credential or an apprenticeship program. Prior to the expansion that began in the 2018-19 academic year, eligibility for the program was narrow and a limited number of students were supported through passport. A year or so before the expansion was initiated, House Bill 6274 challenged Washington to become #1 in the nation for foster youth high school graduation, post-secondary enrollment, and post-secondary completion. Now, Washington State obviously could not move the needle by serving that small number of students that were eligible for the passport program. And so this is one of the results of that work. This upcoming July, the Passport to Careers expansion will be fully implemented and can serve students who experience foster care at any point after their 13th birthday and an unaccompanied homeless youth. Now, I just also wanted to note that although the program serves students pursuing apprenticeships, this session primarily covers students participating in the Passport to College program. Aside from what was mentioned in the previous slide, students must also meet this basic criteria. So students must complete the FAFSA or WSAC and attend an eligible institution in Washington State. Because of Washington's separation of church and state laws, students may not pursue a degree in theology. Passport students must be Washington State residents and enroll in college prior to age 22, and their eligibility expires at age 27. They do have 5 years or 15 quarters to use the scholarship. Now, I did want to note, you can see the little asterisk there, that the age 22 and 27 limitation will likely be amended to align with what is written in the program statute, the current program statute, which is age 21 and 26. And that will be a result of the work that we're doing to update the program WSAC, which is happening in the upcoming months. So the program has expanded significantly in a relatively short period of time. Prior to the passport expansion, the number of eligible students, as I mentioned earlier, was limited to those who had been in foster care for at least 1 year after their 16th birthday and emancipated from care. I added this slide here to make a point. So it's not just to show how many students are being served or how much money the state has invested in the program, but to recognize the added work that you as financial aid administrators and support staff are taking on to support this population of students. I am sincerely grateful to you for doing that. As you can see, in just a couple of years, the program has tripled in size. And the numbers for the 2019-20 academic year are not finalized. Institutions will likely have served around 800 students by the time we close the 19-20 academic year. That's a lot of students and a lot of growth in the program in just a couple of years. So I'm going to pause here for questions. Carla, have you received anything yet?
No questions at this time.
All right, time to continue. So the WSAC Passport team has worked with our IT programmers to make enhancements to the Passport portal. This work was done to help accommodate a more streamlined service to the new student populations. We enhanced security measures around student data, and we added capacity for aid administrators to mark eligibility for unaccompanied homeless youth. And this eliminated the need for the submission of those Excel spreadsheets that I'm really glad to be rid of. There are also other enhancements that you may not readily notice because they are functioning behind the scenes. For example, WSAC staff now has the ability to send electronic award letters to Passport students. And this is mostly helpful because we serve a population of students that moves very frequently. And previously, most of the paper award letters that were being returned to the office in the mail. As part of the enhancements, we also made some improvements to reporting capability. This year, WSAC and DCYF, I'm not sure if you already know about this, but WSAC and DCYF worked on developing a comprehensive data sharing agreement for 3 separate programs. That was the Passport program, the College Bound program, and Setup as well. Student information is sent to WSAC by DCYF on a monthly basis and is automatically populated into the portal for each of the programs. Many of the updates in the portal are a direct result of the new process for gathering eligible student information. It also includes new student verification screens for DCYF to use. So this right here is a screenshot of the updated Passport eligibility checker page in the portal. Now I'd like to point out that we have added more robust security language around the page being available to authorized users only. In the old page, administrators could enter any letters or for either a last name or a first name. For example, you could enter the letter A for their first name and another A for their last name. And every single student with either an A in their first name and their last name would pop up. So it was, it was, although the old screen was secure, we decided that we needed to add additional security measures by scaling in the requirements for student searches. The new screen requires administrators to enter a student's date of birth and either their full last name or the last 4 digits of their social security number. I just wanted to note here too that entering a partial last name will not show any results. Also, we heard you loud and clear. For those of you that are missing the ability to process bulk uploads, please be assured that the IT team is working on adding that function and it will be available soon. In fact, I just got an email about it today, so I know that they're really close to having that launched. So after you enter a student's information, this screen will appear. If the student is eligible, a green check mark, I don't know if, can you see if I hover my mouse there? A green check mark will appear under the eligible column. The classification column identifies the student's type of foster care or unaccompanied homeless status as a qualifier for Passport. Just so you know, there are 4 categories under that classification. The first one is SFY, and that stands for State Foster Youth. URM is an unaccompanied refugee minor, and those are our federal foster youth. TRB is the tribal foster youth, and UHY are the unaccompanied homeless youth. Now QER, right here, I'm going to hover my mouse around that right there, identifies the number of quarters of eligibility remaining for the student. Financial aid administrators will also find this definition by hovering over that little I, in the circle. And so it'll tell you what that is. So if we click, this is another question that I've been getting quite a bit. What is this log student support services release form? Now, you may not know, but this has always been available, but it has kind of been working in the background. But if you click on this, the support service release column provides the financial aid administrator with the ability to document a student's release of information for outreach and support services by a WSAC contractor. The box below will appear when the financial aid administrator clicks that log student support services link. Institutions can choose whether they add the release of information, and it would be a sheet of paper that you would receive from that student. So you can either add that release of information here, or you can go ahead and forward that information to WSAC and we will do it for you. Now WSAC will notify institutions of the selected contractor, which historically has been the College Success Foundation. So they would be responsible for doing the outreach to students. So right here, I'm going to pause again and check in before moving on to forms and lists. Carla, do we have any questions?
Yes, actually. One question. What about those with two last names and you only have one of those names, or you enter them backwards?
Okay, so what I would do in that situation is to use the last 4 digits of the student's social security number.
Thank you. The next question is, do we have to wait for the institution to process the FAFSA before we can check for eligibility on the portal?
No, not necessarily. The eligibility on the portal, you can always check that. So as long as we have a record for the student, then you can go ahead and check it.
That's it.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Moving on to the passport consent. So even though we have a robust data sharing agreement with DCYF, WSAC still needs the ability to collect consent from student populations that may not be served by DCYF. This consent form allows WSAC to verify student eligibility for passport with other organizations that have oversight on a student's dependency, such as DSHS for the federal foster youth or tribal courts. Unaccompanied homeless youth do not need to complete the consent form because eligibility is determined at the post-secondary institution. So student consent is also collected through the FAFSA or WASFA, or by completing the common application, which I know is confusing in the financial aid world because a common application, it means something different in financial aid than it does for passport and ETV. So it's an application that is used for the education training voucher program and passport. And that application is actually housed at DCYF. So for those students who have experienced tribal foster care under the jurisdiction of a tribal court, they must also complete the tribal verification form in addition to the consent form. And this is just a quick screenshot of that tribal verification form. WSAC does not currently have any data sharing agreements with any of the 29 federally recognized tribes in Washington state. So students are asked to have a tribal representative, such as a case manager or maybe social service provider, verify their status and sign the form. And those forms do need to be submitted to WSAC for verification. So as I mentioned earlier, in most cases, unaccompanied homeless youth will have their passport eligibility determined by the financial aid office. WSAC had developed a housing questionnaire early on in the program when the program was expanded to serve unaccompanied homeless youth. We developed this form for in-house use, but what we had heard from institutions is that they would have appreciated, or they would have appreciated some kind of form to document a student's status and keep it in the student's files. So this form is available for institutions to use if you find it helpful. It is not a requirement for any of the institutions to use this. So I just wanted to take a minute to remind you that if an institution has a difficult to determine case, you may refer that student to WSAC for an eligibility review. And then I also wanted to remind you that student eligibility for unaccompanied homeless youth does not need to be re-verified each year unless there is a gap in the student's enrollment. And that's aside from maybe a gap in enrollment for summer term, or like right now in our state of emergency, students may not be attending because of the COVID outbreak. So that would not count against them in maintaining their eligibility for the program. So how do you find passport eligible students on your campus? A lot of times it's from self-referral. The student will identify themselves to you. But WSAC can also support you in this by providing financial aid administrators with a list of students who indicated an interest in attending your institution on their FAFSA or WASFA. The WSAC list simply states that a student is eligible, but does not identify the subgroup that made the student eligible for the program. Institutions are also encouraged to review data collected from the foster youth and foster youth question on their admissions or registration materials. You may also work with the social service providers in your area, such as a member of the setup team or Treehouse or staff from the College Success Foundation to receive referrals. Ultimately, institutions are free to do what works best for them. And oftentimes what I see is that this includes multiple methods of student identification. Alrighty, any questions about the forms used or about identifying students?
Not related to this section. You can proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
So these are just some quick reminders for administrators. Financial aid administrators are asked to please request funding for students each quarter. A reminder that passport funds are limited, and especially with this the higher number of students that we're trying to serve. By delaying a funding request, you can risk a student not receiving passport funds. So it's really important to be requesting those funds every quarter and in a timely manner. So with WCG becoming an entitlement next year, I wanted to remind you that there's no longer a priority for foster youth. All eligible students will receive WCG funding. However, there continues to be a priority for serving foster youth in the state work-study program, so that still continues. Also, as I had touched on earlier, beginning July 1, students who experienced foster care at any point after age 13 are eligible to receive passport. So there are 45 institutions that have agreed to provide passport students with additional support services. In exchange for implementing a viable support plan, institutions receive student support payments. The agreements that were signed almost 2 years ago are expiring as of July 1, and new agreements have been updated and will be going out to institutions in the next few weeks. Of course, updates include language for supporting the new student populations and just a couple of little tweaks here and there. It's not drastically different from what we had done in the past. However, we do have a couple of new things here. First of all, after receiving clear feedback from the Passport leadership team, WSAC has changed the name for both the incentive grant and the viable plan. And this is for those institutions that have agreed to provide those additional support services. So WSAC sent out a survey to institutions a few weeks ago to gather some suggestions, and this is where we landed. So I'm announcing for the first time today that incentive grants will now be known as Passport Student Success Funds, and the viable plan will now be referred to as the Passport Student Success Plan. Along with the submission of the updated Passport Addendum, institutions are also asked to review their Passport Student Success Plans, or their old, what used to be called the viable plan. And WSAC has also worked with the Passport leadership team to make some minor updates to the financial aid administrator and designated support staff role descriptions that are included with the Passport Student Success Plan. And all of these things will be going out when I send the addendum to the institutions. So this, I'm calling this slide Ask and Ye Shall Receive. So last year we decided to mix things up a little bit about the incentive grant report. We changed the questions, we changed the format, and oh boy, did we get feedback on that. What I learned is that the reporting process and questions from last year left a lot of room for improvement. So I'm happy to announce that we've done a ton of work with a couple of researchers, one from UW and one from Wazoo, and members of the Passport leadership team, including institutional staff, to develop much better questions, to give us a much better idea of what's happening on campus, and to hopefully reduce some of the confusion around the questions that were asked last year. We are in the final phases of getting these questions vetted, and I will start building a report template, which will likely be through Survey Gizmo again. The plan is to get the questions to institutions by August 1st. And because some of the questions require some staff collaboration, it will be due at the end of August. Of course, along the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Calvin and I are both more than happy to help. So remember how I mentioned the upcoming WAC updates earlier? Well, now that Carla has wrapped up the WCG WAC updates and gained a bunch of experience, we're going to begin the dive into the Passport WAC updates. Since the current program WAC was written probably in about 2008 or 2009, is no longer in alignment with the program statute. Our goal is to have the new WAC implemented by winter 2021. And in the upcoming months, you can expect to hear from WSAC regarding feedback about the new language. So this is going to be our next big project after spring workshops are done and WCG is fully implemented. So this slide just provides you with some resources around different types of support for Passport students. So I did want to remind institutions that you can use student support funds to help students, and we are, being especially flexible with that during the pandemic. So WSAC is also doing direct outreach to current students through email and through the OtterBot texting campaign. So we do have a special campaign for Passport students only, and these students have elected to be contacted through texting. And then the College Success Foundation, they've expanded their emergency funding through their Scholar Success Fund. And so if a student is running into a situation where they need additional support, please reach out to the College Success Foundation, and hopefully, they can go ahead and help that student. So finally, I'm guessing that you probably don't recognize this Together We Rise organization. There's a brand new program. We just received funding from the Stewart Foundation last week. So this is hot off the press. So we're going to be working with Together We Rise, which is an organization based in California and is dedicated to supporting foster youth. Together We Rise has earmarked $100,000 in last dollar in rapid response emergency funding for Washington's foster youth and unaccompanied homeless youth. And what that means is that if a student has an emergent need, you have a student in your office and they're crying because they can't pay their rent, or if they can't buy groceries, if you are a referring agency, you can go ahead and get that student connected to Together We Rise, and Together We Rise will provide them that support within 24 hours. So post-secondary institutions and community organizations will need to apply to become student referrers. So that's one of the most important things you need to know. And that process will be, it's coming up very quickly. We're hosting an informational webinar next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. with Together We Rise and the College Success Foundation. If you'd like to join, please send me an email and we'll get you a webinar registration link. So moving on to other resources and to our community partners.
How about a question first?
I am happy to take a question. What's up?
A gap to clarify, a student can attend 3 of 4 terms and no gap. But if they attend 2 of 4 terms, that is considered a gap? Question.
Yes, I believe it would.
And the next question is, Together We Rise funds, are those considered estimated financial assistance?
So in this situation, what we're saying is that a student would then be it would be on them to report that as other resources on their FAFSA.
That's all the questions.
Okay, yeah, it's not considered part of their financial aid package. All right, so I've mentioned the Passport leadership team throughout this presentation. This is a group of 30 professionals from a variety of different backgrounds. We meet on a quarterly basis, and now during the COVID closures, we felt that we needed to meet more often. So we're meeting every 2 weeks. And we work on projects such as those that are listed on the slide. You know, we work on the Passport Addendum. We do a lot of resource development, policy advising. The PLT helps me with insight. They provide feedback and help me keep a pulse on the issues that are experienced through serving Passport students. And I am truly grateful for the work that they do for our students. So Passport members have been so dedicated to the work, and I just want to say that I sincerely appreciate the contributions to the program. So I'll really high level touch on Passport to apprenticeships here. WSAC has contracted with ANU to assist students participating in registered apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeship programs. Passport to apprenticeship opportunities helps cover occupational related costs such as tuition, fees, work clothes, rain boots, and other occupational related tools. So ANU works with students interested in pursuing a broad range of apprenticeship programs, including manufacturing, construction, healthcare. There's some IT programs, and it's all within a broad geographic service area. They will also work with students to get connected to apprenticeship programs outside of the Puget Sound region. So Emily Stochel has been the rock star person at ANU, and she's tasked with serving Passport students. If you are aware of any students that might be interested, please feel free to share her contact information with them. And she's just done a tremendous job and is doing lots of outreach to students. So the Senate program, which I also mentioned earlier, is also part of the Passport pipeline. It's a statewide program serving students between the ages of 13 through 21 with successfully transitioning into college, career, or service. There are about 350 students that are served each year. And the Senate providers help students with things such as FAFSA or WSAC completion, college admissions applications. They were doing some campus visitation, scholarship application completion, and many more things. So there are 6 contractors that are working with WSAC. And the first one is in Spokane. You can see Region 1 North, and that's Volunteers of America. In Region 1 South, that's the Yakima Tri-Cities area. We work with Catholic Charities. In Region 2 North, which is Mount Vernon, we work with YouthNet. And then Region 2 South is Seattle-based YMCA. Region 3 North is in Tacoma, and that's Pierce County Alliance. And Region 2 South, which look at that giant geographic area, we work with Community Services, which is based in Olympia. So other notable resources, the program manual has been updated and will be posted on the WSAC website. Some just really high level updates include alignment with the WCG repayment policy. And then of course we have, updated screenshots of the portal pages. And then, the language change around the student support services and the student support plan. And then speaking of the WSAC website, there are also a ton of resources available on the Passport page. It includes a student guide, there's outreach flyers for administrators and support staff to download and use, the implementation timeline, which, we're fully coming to the end of as of July 1. That's available there. And there's a series of frequently asked questions. Then the www.readysitgrad.wa.gov/passport website was also recently updated thanks to Calvin's hard work. The website is student focused and also includes a list of institution contacts. And then the Washington Passport Network is focused on serving administrators. You can find forms and publications, guidance for suggested use of the Passport Incentive Grant, or student support funds. And then there's lots of information about training opportunities. And then I also wanted to note that the published materials that we have on the WSAC websites and on Washington Passport Network, they are updated fairly regularly. So if you are, I always want to recommend that you go to the website to pull down the most recent document that we have there, because it is updated. It is updated pretty frequently. So I'm just going to take a minute here to plug the Passport Conference that has been moved to November 2020 at the Tacoma Convention Center. And then we also, through the Washington Passport Network and the College Success Foundation, we do have a series of recorded webinars that are held throughout the year and are available on the CSF YouTube channel. So I've left the address here for you. You can go ahead and check that out. And you can access all kinds of information. There was one that was very well attended about serving students who serving tribal foster youth. That was amazing. It was a really good session. And then this here is just the contact information for the WSAC Passport team. If you have any questions, you can either contact me, Calvin, or Carla. We're always happy to help. And even though we're working from home right now, we're fully functional, communicating on a daily basis, and we'll do whatever we can to support you and the work that you're doing for our students. And then right here, I just wanted to thank you again for sticking with me this late on a Thursday afternoon. Carla, did you have any other questions that came up?
But of course. The first one, the Passport Handbook reads, the applicant must have been an unaccompanied homeless youth during the prior year, which would be 2018-19 academic year, and must apply for passport after July 1st, 2019. So this is looking at the 1920 guidance. Okay. Our question was, what about if they are homeless now? Do they need to wait for the next academic year?
With that, because the language says that they are unaccompanied homeless in the year prior. Yes, I believe that you would have to wait.
Further on under timeline, it says must have experienced unaccompanied homelessness on or after July 1 in the year prior to their post-secondary enrollment or apprenticeship participation. So this is continuing on that same question.
Okay.
And so that, I think that answers it, that it's on, it has to always be on or after. The homelessness is on or after July 1.
Of the prior year.
The prior, yeah.
Yeah.
And any updates on Way to Go Make It Happen?
So Way to Go and Make It Happen is not happening this year. There was, that was a decision that was made through the College Success Foundation to not have that happen this year.
And I believe that concludes your questions.
All righty. Well, everyone, just a reminder, this is recorded and will be posted on the WSAC website. Of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much for joining me. You guys have a good afternoon.